The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. This is Celia, and welcome to today's Facing the Fear webinar brought to you by your Vanderbilt Alumni Association. I'm so glad you could join us from wherever you are this afternoon or maybe morning. This webinar is just one resource of many that Vanderbilt provides to our alumni, so be sure to familiarize yourself with the additional services we offer at vanderbilt.edu/alumni/career. Today's webinar will be wrapped up within the hour, lasting around 45 minutes. Presenter Hallie Crawford will take a moment at the end of the presentation to address any questions you may have. However, please feel free to type them into the questions box on the side panel of your screen throughout the presentation. The content of today's webinar will be recorded and posted on our Alumni Career Services webpage. And now I'm pleased to introduce to you Hallie Crawford. Hallie is a career coach, speaker, and author based in Atlanta whose company Create Your Career Path helps people find their dream job. Hallie graduated from Vanderbilt in 1995 with degrees in interpersonal communication and psychology, which I'm sure you'll agree prepared her very well for serving as a coach. For more than 10 years, Hallie and her team have helped people of all ages worldwide achieve their career goals. She's published numerous books, including Career Transition Tips for Singles and Identify Your Ideal Career Path. She is regularly featured as a career expert in the media, including CNN, Wall Street Journal, Fox Business News, Yahoo Hot Jobs, Kiplinger, Forbes.com, and Entrepreneur Magazine, among others. I'm excited to now turn this afternoon's presentation over to Hallie.
Yay, thanks, Celia. I'm so excited to be here. I was pausing for a second to make sure I got the screen up and everything. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. I know your time is valuable, so we will dive right in. So this is Facing the Fear, taking control of your career transition. And it was 15 years ago, and I was living in Chicago, working at the University of Illinois there. And one day, I found myself crying in the bathroom at my job. I'll admit it, it's kind of embarrassing, but I was. And this was actually the second day in a row that this has happened. And that day that I was crying in the bathroom, I remember pulling myself together and going shopping after work to see if that would help. It didn't. And what I didn't know at the time was that this was the beginning of the end. After that, I got sick several times and injured myself badly. Seemingly random things, but important things that told me I was under way too much stress and way too unhappy in this job. 1 month later, I gave my notice, and it was scary. And honestly, my parents thought I was crazy. They told me so. And my coworkers did as well, because I did not have anything lined up. But I was desperate and fearful and knew I had to make a change. And I'm using this picture today on here because I think it's so great. There's no crying in baseball, as we all know from this movie. And if we fast forward 15 years, as a coach, I see surveys come out every few years with depressing numbers about employee dissatisfaction. The most recent one is this one from Right Management. It was conducted last year in the spring. In 2012 in the spring. And only 19% of those people surveyed are satisfied or were satisfied in their job. And as you can imagine, I've spoken to, and my company has worked with thousands of people who are unsatisfied and helped them make their transition. Now, what do you think the percentage is, guys, of people who stay in a job they don't enjoy because of fear? It's big. 85% of our clients, when we get started with them in our coaching, say they are their biggest obstacle. And what they mean by that is their fears are holding them back. Hands down, I mean, this surprised me at the beginning, and now it doesn't anymore because hands down, almost everybody says it. And it hits home for me every time because I waited way too long in that job that I had to make a change as well because of fear. So I totally understand it, okay? So the good news is, we got to focus on the good news as soon as possible, right? That there is hope. It is possible to find a career path that works for you once you get past these fears and these obstacles. My company helps people do this, and 98% of the people, the clients we work with, they find their direction and make their transition. So here's the deal, guys. It does take time and effort. There is risk and compromise involved in making any kind of change like this, but it is possible. And that's what I'm going to give you today. an overview of the top 3 tips that I used to manage my own fears to make this happen, and that we use with our clients to do the same. This is about facing the fear, guys, not shying away from it. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about. Here's our basic agenda. So I'm going to set the stage on the next slide here and talk about the importance of attitude and importance of facing your fears head on. We're going to give you 3 steps: identify, manage, and visualize your success. Walk through these, and I'm going to give you some specific action items. I want you to walk away today, guys, with at least 2 action items that you will implement as a result of this webinar. And we'll talk for a second about our Vanderbilt coaching program coming up. There's a discounted rate on that. So this is our basic agenda for today, okay? Let's keep going and dive in. So why is this important? Why is it important to face our fears like this? Attitude is everything, guys. And the mental, I think what I want you to get from this today is how important the mental game is in career transition, not just taking action, but having the right attitude first. Career change is stressful. Our jobs pay our bills. Our identity can be wrapped up in what we do. And it can be easier to ignore and just kind of muddle through, even in a career that's not a fit. I joke with my clients that it's like an old pair of slippers that don't fit, but at least we know what to expect every day, right? So here's the deal. Attitude is, this is a great definition I like a lot, a complex mental state involving beliefs, feelings, and dispositions. And this is the key point that I want you guys to get, to act in certain ways, okay? So your attitude is going to affect your actions enormously. And you need to understand that first before you take any action in terms of your career change. This quote right here, the biggest thing is to have the mindset and belief you can win every tournament going in. This is actually from Tiger Woods. He understands the importance of positive thinking. We won't go there with his personal life, not relevant today. But after he won the Western Open, this is what he said to USA Today. And I think he knows what he's talking about. He's a pretty good golfer. So consider this and this quote in terms of how important the attitude is. So here's the deal, guys. You do need to keep negative forces at bay in order to be willing to make the change. And I want you to know, though, that I'm not saying be unrealistic here. But what you have to do is try to avoid the negative Nellies and any other self-defeating or defeating influences. Keep those at bay. Turn off the news if you have to. Ask a friend for support. Create affirmations to negate the fears, whatever it is. And what I want you to know, too, and then we're going to get to, I want you guys to be thinking about this right now. What can you do in order to adjust your attitude and face the fear, okay? And here's some examples. But what I want you to get first is that these fears are normal. Fears are part of the process. The key is that you just can't let them hold you back if you're unhappy. And don't let yourself get to the point where I was getting sick as a result of the stress from my job. So know, everybody, that they're totally normal, but they do not have to hold you back. So think about this for a moment for me. Get out your pen and paper, write on your computer, whatever works best for you, and ask yourself now, what are 2 things you can do to address your fears and create a more positive attitude? Write them down for me right now. It can be anything from turning off the news when it's, talking about the tough economy, asking a friend for support, creating affirmations, anything that works for you. Okay, and write down at least 2 things here. And we'll talk about some more action steps that you can take during the course of our time today. Okay, so critical piece from this slide, everybody, is to remember that attitude is everything. Let's go to the next one. All right, so here are the most common obstacles. These are the most common obstacles that I see in our coaching clients in terms of making a transition that we help them address up front. Fear is the biggie, negative thinking, lack of confidence, listening to those naysayers, and not being committed. They don't spend enough time on their career goals or their transition, or they don't set specific goals in the first place, okay? They don't have the right plan in place. We are going to talk, everybody, about these first 2, because the bottom line is it starts with you, okay? And I want to show you just this one thing real quick. This is our Create Your Career process that we use with all of our clients. And I just want you all to notice that the very first thing we do with all of our clients is talk to them about commitment and how they can manage the obstacles that get in their way. This is how important it is. We know that if we don't address this up front, the coaching is not going to go anywhere. So fear, or facing the fear, is critical in managing it. All right, so step number 1 is to identify those fears. So how do we start to manage them and be active or actively manage our fears? So step number 1 is to identify what they are in the first place. There's a great book called Taming Your Gremlins by Rick Carson. He talks about your negative inner voices that hold you back. And the key is to become more aware of them and observe them instead of being their victim. Okay? So step number 1 here, I want you to think about this right now. Again, get out your pen and paper and identify the fear. So when you think of career change, what words, thoughts, or feelings come to mind first? Write down a couple things right now. What are the main fears that you have about making a career change? Okay? So go ahead and write that down. And then what I want you to do as you're writing this down and thinking about it, you can think about this as like a voice in your head, a little gremlin on your shoulder, an image, whatever works best for you. But the first thing we need to know is, okay, what is this voice saying to me that is holding me back? Okay? The second step here is to identify like what their favorite saying is. What do they normally say to you? Is it you don't have enough experience to make a change? You might fail. It's unrealistic. So be very clear about exactly what this gremlin, so to speak, is saying to you. Step 3 is, and this is kind of a fun step, is to name your gremlin. This sounds kind of funny. You can call it Negative Nellie or Pessimistic Paul or whatever works for you. And the deal is that doing this can take away their power, enabling you to become their observer rather than their victim. So when you can laugh at this voice, it helps you observe it more and be separate from it. So step 3 is you can name your gremlin if you want to. The next step, and this is a critical one here, it's here on the slide, is to identify the effect of this fear. What's the effect of each of your gremlins, this voice in your head? What's the effect it has on you? How do you behave as a result? So write that down for me now. How do you behave? Do you stay in the job that you don't like? Do you procrastinate in your search? Whatever it is, write that down. Write down the impact or the effect, because this is critical. It's linking the attitude to the action and how it manifests itself in your life. Okay? And then the last step here in identifying the fears is to acknowledge the reality and identify the truth. And this is a really critical, important one, guys. You need to look at what your gremlin is saying to you. And is there an element of truth in it? Because you need to manage that or address it when you are managing it. Because here's the deal. If you don't have enough experience or enough education to pursue a career path you're considering, that's a fact and a reality. We can't ignore it by just coming up with an affirmation that's like putting a Band-Aid on it. So you need to understand what the truth is, and if there is an element of truth in this fear, so that you can address it when you're managing it. And we'll talk about that more in just a moment, okay? So the last little step here in identifying the fears is to acknowledge reality and identify the truth. Why is this important? These gremlin things, you might be like, why are we talking about this? Gremlins, what is she talking about? It might sound kind of goofy, but here's the deal. I want to give you an example. Client Jennifer in South Carolina, she called me one day and she said, I went on this interview, loved the job. They were actually friends of hers that had started a small restaurant, and she wanted to eventually work for a restaurant in a chain. And she said, Hallie, they can't pay me, my salary that I'm making now at my current job. And I think I just have to go back to the drawing board and give up and start again with my search. Her gremlins were all over her and her fears. I said, no, you can't do that. You need to call them back and tell them, you really want the job, can we work something out? Because the exchange between her and them, it was an email, and they just said, we'd love to offer you the job, but we can't pay you enough. She beat the gremlin in that moment, called them back. That's now where she's working, guys. They worked something out where they were able to give her a bonus that year and also increase her salary after 6 months and also have a profit-sharing plan, okay? But the deal is, in that moment, Jennifer had a choice. She could listen to the fears and go back to the drawing board, or she could be in the job that she's in now that she loves. So this is just a quick illustration of how important it is to identify these fears and manage them. Okay, so let's talk about the next step. Critical piece is to manage them, right? So here's the deal. We need to actively manage these fears because, like we're talking about in the gremlin example, they can be kind of running the show in the back of our minds, and we need to be really assertive with them. And the deal is that first, like we talked about a moment ago, we need to acknowledge the reality of what they're saying when we're considering developing our process for managing them. So if you look at the slide here, first, like we talked about a moment ago, what is true about them? Make sure you acknowledge that. And then develop a process for managing. And guys, here are some examples of how you can manage those gremlins, okay? And we'll talk about these for a second. And I want you to take one of the examples that you came up with just a second ago, one of your fears, and I want you to think about it right now. What is one way you can start to manage that actively starting today, okay? Do you want to come up with an affirmation? Is it better, like, do you need to talk back to it and say, go away, you know, slam the door, whatever it is on it? Do you need to just ignore it and move on to something else or push it aside? Any of these will work, so take a moment to think about what might work best for your fears, okay? And then keep in mind, and this is a critical point here, about affirmations, if you do choose that one in terms of, in order to manage, you know, one of these fears, keep in mind that you need to acknowledge the truth, okay? So it's very important, two things. Number one, it's important to choose an affirmation that you truly believe, okay? If you say something that you don't believe, it's not going to work. And you also need to address the element of truth. So if, for example, no, I don't have the skills yet to go become a financial analyst, for example, but I can take a class. I had a client, Kim, here in Atlanta, who wanted to go be a consultant. She needed to go get her MBA. After she did research, she knew absolutely that's what she had to do. She went back to school to do that. She had the time, and it was, you know, the right time in her life to do it. But the point was, she couldn't sit there and say, yeah, I can go be a consultant. She needed to say, I can go do this. I need to get my MBA, and there are steps I need to take, but I can make it happen, okay? So, for example, if you don't feel like you're not confident enough to make a career change, you can say something instead of like, I am confident, if you don't fully believe that, like, I am beginning to tap into my confidence. So think about this right now for me, guys. What is one thing you can do to start managing these, okay? We had a client, Alex, who actually contacted me. It was just January of this year, and he said, hey, Hallie, I talked to you a year ago, almost to the day, and still unhappy in my job, and I haven't made any changes because of fear. A full year. He had even considered and thought about coaching and doing something about it, but he did nothing. He did a career assessment with us and some coaching, figured out he wants to be a financial analyst, actually, is in his brand new job, loving it, okay? So choose one way, guys, this is one of your action steps, to manage your gremlin or your fear, however you want to see it or think about it. Let's go on to step number 3, okay? So step number 3 is to visualize success. And one of the things that we do with our clients is what we call a future self visualization, where we have them look at and imagine who they want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever works best for them, okay? And as we talked about, your attitude affects your action, right? It's underneath everything that we do. And one way to impact that is to think about who you need to be in order to implement this change. So it's not just about taking action or managing the fears. This is kind of the flip side of managing the fears, is to visualize who you need to be in order to make this happen. Do you need to be brave, willing to take the risk, more confident? So I want you to think about this right now, everybody. Take out your pen again and think about, who do you need to be? What qualities do you need to have, first of all? Is it that confidence? Is it being more willing to take a risk? Is it being more willing to network with people? Whatever it is, what qualities do you need to have to make this happen? And then think about what processes, people, or systems need to be in place for you to help you face the fear and move forward. And I'll give you a moment to think about that. And if you're having trouble coming up with qualities you need to have, think about people in your life who you admire and the qualities about them that you admire. That can help you come up with some ideas. It could be greater wisdom, communication skills, whatever it is. and think specifically about the qualities you need to have to be successful in your transition. And now when we think about processes, people, and systems, what I mean here is, do we need to be more organized with our search? Like, do we need to have an Excel sheet, to manage our search and have that specific process or system in place so that we're more successful? Because one of the fears might be, oh, it's so overwhelming, I can't manage it. But if we break it down into tangible action steps and are more organized with it, it can help us. What people do we need to have in place? Do we need to ask friends and family, hey, when I'm getting frustrated or fearful or down, can I call you? And you can help pump me up for a second. Okay? So that's what I mean by this. And I want you to come up with using the gremlin from before, those action steps there, but now kind of flipping that on its head and saying, okay, what qualities do I need to have? All right? Okay. So let's talk about a couple of things here. Before we get to the conclusion for today, and we're going to have lots of good time for Q&A, couple of things I want to do, and I want to do a little kind of mini visualization to help lock in the learning at the end here. We've got a few career coaching products. If you want to just step in, like stick your toe in the water with some assistance in a small way, there are products on our website. You can check that out here. And we actually are going to do a door prize today. One lucky person, Celia and I are going to choose someone from our list of registrants, will get our career transition ebook. Okay? And if you are ready to define your ideal career direction and ready to take action to get it moving as quickly as possible, we wanted to mention this to you briefly today. It's our 4-session webinar series. You can go here to learn more, but it starts in a couple of weeks. It starts on March 11th. You can do it during your lunch hour. It includes our complete coaching workbook, 4 webinar sessions, and a coaching session with me as well. Okay? So check that out afterwards. If you need, this is specifically, everybody, for people who need to define their career direction. Okay? All right. So let's talk about visualizing success. And I want to do a quick little kind of mini visualization with you. So everybody, either close your eyes or just look at the floor or the ceiling, whatever works best for you, so you can get kind of into a calm state for me. And I want you to think about for a moment, what would it look like if tomorrow you committed to fully facing your fear? If you took what we talked about today to heart and took action on everything that we discussed today in terms of facing your fear, imagine you wake up in the morning ready for the day, completely energized, believing in yourself, you have a positive attitude, and you're ready to take action. And you step outside, and it's like there's a new reality here waiting to greet you, because you've made that commitment to face those fears and make the changes you need to. What 2 things would be different for you if you committed to this? Just think about that for a moment. Write it down if you want to. What 2 things would be different in your life if you made this commitment to face your fears? Now, take a breath and shift gears for me for a moment. What would it be like to not do that and not reach what you just saw? I know that so many of us, me included, we go to these webinars or, take a class, and we have great intentions of taking action and implementing things, but we get busy and life gets busy. It's normal. But what would be lost if you did not take action from today and never gave this new reality a chance to happen? What would be the impact of that? And more importantly, what opportunity would be missed? Remember and think about the client Jennifer in South Carolina. She almost walked away from going back to them. So this is important. Let me say it again. What opportunity would be missed? And go ahead and you can write that down if you need to too. Okay? So you can open your eyes or come back to the screen here. And I want to just remind you of the 3 steps here and then give you a quote that really helped me enormously face my fears and move forward in my career transition. It was part of what helped me leave that job that was, making me so unhappy. So the key here, everybody, and I just love this slide with this fish here, is it's about taking action. And sometimes, yes, there is risk involved, and sometimes it is scary, and that is part of the process, and it's okay that that's there. The key, everybody, remember, is to mitigate or minimize that risk as much as you possibly can, but know that that's part of the deal. You have to jump into this bigger bowl here sometimes. So the 3 steps we talked about, just as a reminder, are to identify what those fears are, take action in order to manage them on a regular, daily basis, okay? And finally, to visualize your success. And by the way, everybody, I encourage you to visualize your success on a regular basis. You all have probably heard about creating a vision board. That's one of the things that we have our clients do frequently. When you visualize and imagine your success, it's just like those Olympic athletes. They're envisioning and picturing how they want things to turn out. It absolutely works. Studies have shown that it does. It helps enormously. It goes back to your attitude, okay? So visualize your success. Do all of these every single day, okay? So I want to leave you and start to close out with this. This is the quote. This is my favorite quote of all time. And this is what kept me going to quit that job that I had and to start my business when, again, people thought I was crazy at that time too. People were thinking I was very crazy at that time of my life. But it was well worth the risk I took. So we left me at that job I disliked where I actually gave them 3 months notice. I needed to give them notice, so I felt better and felt like there was light at the end of the tunnel. And the end of the story is I did quit. I did not have anything lined up. I did temp work for 4 months, kept myself afloat. And after that, I found a job with a friend that I had for 2 years, part-time. It was a part-time job while I grew my coaching business on the side. It was worth the risk and every single scary step I took. So I want you guys to keep in mind as well that sometimes our fears tell us that things aren't possible. We can't make a career change because sometimes we think about it in terms of, well, I quit one job and then I just go to the next one. But remember, everybody, there are so many different ways to implement your change. I just gave you one. As part-time job, you can start your dream on the side. You can take a class just to get your feet wet. So many different options. So keep that in mind as well when those fears are talking in order to help you manage them, okay? So it was such an honor to be here with you all today. I want to go ahead and close it out for the moment, be mindful of our time here. And then Celia, if you want to start sharing questions that people have, I'd be happy to answer them before we close out completely for the day. So go ahead, everybody. Whatever questions you have, go ahead and put them in the chat box. Let us know what we can answer.
Hallie, we do have one from earlier. I thought maybe you could get started while folks have a chance to respond. Somebody asked, how can I go from being an attorney to something else?
Okay, so when you're thinking about a specific career path, an attorney, there's different career paths you can pursue, but it is a little bit more narrow, obviously, in terms of your background, experience, and education. But this will be helpful for everybody. One of the things I have my clients do to brainstorm different career ideas for them or possibilities is write a list of keywords. So attorney could be one, legal could be another. Any words that are relevant to your industry, write that list of keywords down. And then you can start brainstorming online and with other people as well, but start with the online research. If you plug those into Google, for example, careers in the legal field, careers related to being an attorney, that kind of thing. If you do that, you can come up with additional ideas. There are some other great websites, though, that I'll share with you that are specifically career brainstorming websites. One of them is called mypursuit.com. Mypursuit.com, kind of like the pursuit of happiness. You can plug in your keywords there. It will give you ideas. Another great website is myplan.com. And a third one is the onetcenter.org. And it's ONET center.org. These are 3 great websites that not everybody knows about. I'm always surprised by this. But you can plug in different interests or talents that you have, or even background and experience, and it will bring up different career paths that have those keywords in it. I hope that was helpful.
Fantastic. Someone else has asked, what are some signs that you are in the right career?
Ooh, that's a really good one. I like that. So signs you're in the right career is if you feel rewarded and fulfilled. It doesn't have to be every single minute of every day, but at the end of the day, most days, the majority, you have that sense of satisfaction in some way and reward and fulfillment. If your career or job is using your talents and skills, more, like I would say 70 to 80% of the time, I'd go for 80% actually, and those talents and skills that you want to use, that's a good sign too. If you fit well within the work environment, and the work environment there is a good fit for your personality, you like your coworkers and your boss, that's another great sign. So those are just some to kind of get you going to think about it. I love that question.
Okay, here's a good one too. How do you get past caring about what other people think? You said people thought you were crazy, but you just left your job anyway. I have a really hard time finding what's important to me in the midst of being bombarded by what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, and listen, I want you to know that it was not easy for me either. It took time and effort to kind of tune that out, so it is tough. So here's the thing with naysayers, usually those people in our lives, they care about us, and so they're trying to help us and be realistic and not have us do, something crazy. So for me, one thing that helped was to be like, okay, look, they mean well, but I know what's right for me. One of the things that helped me know what was right for me, honestly, is I hired a coach at the time to figure out my career direction. I was very lost and had a hard time with that. And then what I did was that basically, and this is what I'd actually suggest to you, is just stop sharing for a little while. While you're working on figuring out your direction and what the next best step is, don't share with anyone unless you feel that they're going to be supportive. So I tell people just to stop sharing and not share until they feel more solid in it. I use the analogy of, at the beginning when you're uncertain about your direction, you're like a sapling tree with your roots aren't really in the ground. So wait until you're more like an oak tree, you're really solid, until you start sharing with people, because then they can't push you over, okay? So it was a little backwards for me. They had already told me I was crazy, and I kind of had to backtrack a little bit. But what I did was I started just sharing much more selectively with people and just had like a party line, a pat answer to my career transition. Like, yeah, I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but I'm working it out. So another way that you can kind of head them off at the pass is come up with a pat answer that you can give that doesn't allow the conversation to go further. Hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, that answer sort of touched on this one, but an attendee said, thank you for these reminders. Even when I'm confident of my own abilities, one thing I'm struggling with is convincing others how great I think those skills and talents are. How do I convince them?
I love that. That's great. So one thing I would say about that is I want you to feel confident in it first. And I'm not sure I want you to get too wrapped up in feeling like you have to convince other people, because I just worry about that a little bit. Like on the one hand, they'll kind of know or they won't. I wouldn't spend too much time, of course, unless it's an employer or something like that. If that is the case and you need to do that, I would say, without tooting your own horn too much, give examples and illustrations. So when you are in job search mode, for example, or with your employer, be sure to, in a performance review, illustrate what you feel you've done well and have stories to illustrate it. Sometimes it's better to tell someone a story about what you did as opposed to saying, look how great I am, I'm so good at this. You can tell them a story, and it's kind of a softer way to do that. But the more you insert that into your conversation on a regular basis, the better, because you're the one that has to promote yourself first. So I would use that idea of stories to illustrate. And one thing that I always tell clients too, by the way, guys, is on your resume, I always want people to update their resume at least every 6 months, because we always forget these little accomplishments that we've, made or had in our jobs. even if it's something small, it could be an illustration of what we do well that we could use later on. So I always tell people, keep a running list of your resume and see it as a continuously, a continuous working document where you're always updating it with new stuff.
All right, next question. This may be too specific, but are you aware of any common transitions / new jobs in which dentists ultimately find fulfillment?
I'm not. I'll just be real direct and honest. I don't. What I would do is, again, and actually this could go for the person who is asking about the attorney. What I would do for those guys is I would say, okay, what do I like about being a dentist and an attorney, and what do I dislike? And focus on the things that you like first and say, what is it about that? Because sometimes in order to identify our direction, we need to think about what's underneath. Okay, so is it about people? Is it about you like helping people with their health? That can help you get the ball rolling with brainstorming additional different ideas. Sometimes when we stick to, well, I'm a dentist or an attorney, it keeps us in a box. So if you can kind of take it a step further or look below or underneath it and go back to the basics about, okay, what do I like and dislike, and take actually those dislikes and turn them into things that you want to have instead, then it can give you clues to possible ideas. But I'm sorry I don't have specific, examples for dentists. Good question.
All right, thanks for all these questions, guys. Another one, what do you do if you've already left the job you don't enjoy but have yet to find or move on to something else more fulfilling?
Okay, can you repeat that one, Celia, one more?
Sure. What do you do if you've already left the job that you don't enjoy but have yet to find or move on to something else more fulfilling?
Oh, yeah, so you're kind of in between. Well, I would take the time that you have, assuming that if you're not working right now, I would take this time to really vet out and think about what's the right next step for you. Because when we work with clients and they're working with us, 2 or 3 times a month, just to use an example, in coaching, it usually takes them a couple of months to figure out their direction, okay? So the point is that it takes time to really vet it out and determine the right direction. I wish there was a magic, wand or career test or website that could just tell you. But what I would do is take this time as a gift in a way and say, this is the time I'm going to use to really figure it out once and for all. Take some online career assessments. There's a free one that's called assessment.com. You can try that out. The StrengthsFinder is another assessment that we like a lot. StrengthsFinder.com is another one. So I would just leverage it. I would leverage this time to really figure it out once and for all. And assessments are one kind of easy, quick way to get started to identify what you want.
Okay, an attendee has said, my biggest fear about changing jobs is that I would have to give up 3 weeks of vacation time I've earned, 10 paid holidays, a flex work schedule that with every other Friday off, and tons of sick time. Leisure time is very important to me. So how can I make a change but not regret giving up all my time off and possibly move on to a job where I don't have any sick time and only a week or 2 at the most off work?
Okay, well, that's a very valid question. And here's the thing, guys, that like I said at the beginning, this isn't about being Pollyanna and not being practical. We have to take care of our needs, our bills, everything else. So what I would say to this person is, first of all, you've got some golden handcuffs going on. You're being held by that time that they're giving you, the sick time, everything else. And it's not to say that it's not important to you, but know that there are other jobs and other companies out there that can offer those same things. Now, there might not be a ton of them, but what I would do is start to, at the very least, you need to say to yourself, I did something about it, I overcame the fear, and I did my research. So I would start doing your homework and say, okay, what career direction do I want to go in, and what are the companies or organizations that have that better work-life balance? Do your research and find out, know that they are out there. It may not be as common, as the less time off, et cetera, but you can't just stay there because of that, and you know that. And so, I would vet it out and at least do your research first to find those other organizations, because within every industry there are companies that have that better work-life balance. It's just a question of finding them.
All right. Let's say you have a job that offers personal fulfillment but doesn't pay what you are worth. What are some strategies to achieve the pay you are worth in the job that you do have?
Ooh, you guys are asking great questions. This is awesome. Okay, So I would consider, first of all, can you make more money at your current position? Like, do you need to go to your boss and say and negotiate for a higher salary? I would always start in your own backyard because that's easier, right? At least to a certain extent. Worst they can say is no. But do you need to go and ask for more money and negotiate for it? And when you do that, you go with, you're armed and ready with your information. What's the salary, research that what accomplishments have you, had in the past year, et cetera. Then, if that's not going to happen and not going to work, could you do freelance on the side, doing what you're doing in order to beef up your income? Or can you find a way, like a different organization to do the same thing that you're doing or something similar? Maybe if you're a nonprofit now, maybe you go to private industry, or maybe vice versa, okay? But figure out a way to kind of plug the holes, starting with where you are now. But keep in mind that there's a lot of times our clients can do something similar to what they're doing and still get that reward and fulfillment just by changing to a different organization, or like I said, going from private industry to nonprofit or vice versa.
Okay, this one is as it pertains to the experience that is required on the job description. How can we sift through the jobs that we want and actually require this experience versus those where you can leverage other experiences instead? How do we identify whether experience is really a barrier or not without being able to get in touch with a corporate recruiter?
Fantastic question. Informational interviews. So what you need to do is you need to start conducting informational interviews with people in the industry that you're looking at, and even better in those specific roles, and ask them how critical it is. So if you want to know what the inside scoop is on any job or any industry, you need to start networking and talking to people, finding connections, going to association meetings if you have to. Use the Vanderbilt alumni database. It's genius. Like, if you connect with or contact a Vanderbilt alum, they are much more likely to reach out to you or respond to you. So leverage this as well to make those connections and talk to people. It's nothing like getting it from the horse's mouth. That's how you can find out, what's most important. And you want to do a good sample size, like talk to at least 5 to 10 people to get a sense of it to make sure you're on the right track.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Thanks, everybody. This is from somebody who has faced the fear, has left a job, but there aren't any backup plans, and though this person has several years' experience, nobody in other fields of interest seem to want to do informational interviews or respond to an unemployed person. Even reaching out to friends and alums have not been helpful. So now what?
I'm sorry. Okay. So first of all, I wouldn't even go to the I'm unemployed thing. Like, I wouldn't let them know that until you actually have them on the phone call. And I'm not sure that that's why they're not responding to it. Could be, but I would just move that aside completely. Start with friends and family first and ask them, and be really careful, guys, about, I'm not asking you or wanting to talk to you to get a job. I'm asking for information and assistance. Be really clear about that, because they won't respond to you if they think that you're going to ask them to, give you a job. So be clear and say, could I just have 10 to 15 minutes of your time to conduct an informational interview, learn more. If you're getting stuck with your current network and they're not responding to you like you're saying, leverage the Vanderbilt alumni database. Go find new people. Go to an association meeting. Go to a networking meeting or group. Find new people that you can talk to who are in the same boat as you are, and understand that value and importance of networking. So I would try to find some kind of fresh faces, I guess, if you will.
Okay, excellent. Well, that is all the time we have, but I want to reassure all of you that have stuck it out, and I appreciate you being here, that we will archive this webinar. So if you didn't scribble furiously enough to get all the questions and answers down, check our webpage in just a few days, and we'll have that up. But Hallie, thank you primarily for sharing your wisdom and encouragement with us today. And for all of you that joined us, again, I urge you to explore all the career resources and events, both electronic and in person, including the Commodore Career Intensive Hallie told you about. I'll certainly send you information about that as well. There's still time to sign up for that and get going on March 11th. Also, we will have a feedback form if you can help us shape these future webinars so we make sure we're reaching you where you are in your career and really providing the resources that are most helpful to you. Also, make sure to join the Vanderbilt LinkedIn group if you have not, the alumni LinkedIn group, the official one, and you can trade career advice, and also lots of jobs are posted there as well as VU Connect. So thanks again to all of you. Thank you, Hallie, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Celia. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.